we are back. Okay, so we are going to get into today's startup pitches. Like I mentioned a minute ago, we've got two different categories of startups today. So we'll be starting first with the smart cities category. We've got 3 startups participating, and then we'll move into the smart utilities category. Real quick before I get into the rules, all the judges on the call, you should have your judges sheet sent out to you. I think we just resent that, so you have it at the top of your inbox. So just make sure you have that open and ready to go. The rules for today are pretty simple. Each startup will have 5 minutes to pitch, and then there will be 5 minutes of judges Q&A. So we're getting real technical here. I'm going to set a 5-minute alarm on my phone. So you all should be able to hear it ding when it goes off, but I'll go ahead and give you, I'll speak up too when the first 5 minutes are up. And then we'll move into the 5 minutes of judges Q&A. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. First up, we've got Samantha from Re3D.
What if I told you that all of the plastic water bottles and waste from the bases in San Antonio could be repurposed to make training aids or objects to save the taxpayer dollars? Or what if all the manufacturing scrap and trim that otherwise goes to landfill in Central Texas could be used to create things either internally for a business or externally to create value add? These are 2 real-world examples that our customers and community are working on as we speak. Hi. I'm Samantha, and I am an Air Force reservist on the weekend, and during the week, I have the honor of being a co-founder and catalyst with Matthew here as we decimate the 2 biggest barriers to 3D printing that we see as a path to creating smarter cities. And that's cost and scale. You see, when you actually go to buy a 3D printer, they're often very small. They only make things you could hold in your hand. So when you go to make things at the human scale that are truly functional, it can be cost prohibitive, starting anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 or more. This leaves a $37 billion market opportunity. Enter Gigabot. It's our flagship technology that's 30 times the size of a desktop printer, but starts at a fraction of the cost at just under $10,000. Now, Gigabot is supplemented by a whole host of services, including recurring revenue around upgrades, training, warranties, and consumables that allows you to walk from ideation to full-scale production across your factory floor. We were honored to launch with 40K. We received equity free from Startup Chile, and then launched Gigabot on Kickstarter, where it was a huge hit, no pun intended, raising over $250,000 and funded in just 1 day. Fast forward 7 years later, despite being hit by 3 hurricanes and our outpost in San Juan, Puerto Rico, as well as our Houston factory, we've continued to scale. We have an outpost in Austin, and we are so honored to have achieved over $8 million in revenue with $4 million in grants and awards like this that have allowed us to bootstrap our dream to reality. We're honored to serve customers in over 50 countries around the world who are actively buying our systems and services. They have a diverse needs, including this West Coast utilities company. I can't say their name, but you might recognize them if you check out the video on our website. Matthew and I knew we could make this happen because we have over 45 years of manufacturing and engineering expertise. I previously sold a company for which I held 3 patents. And we were both recruited to NASA, where we spent over 10 years working on sustainable solutions, where it culminated in me being the social entrepreneur in residence for NASA headquarters. We're complemented by a diverse team of doers and dreamers who have the network know-how to make this a reality. We're also committed to social responsibility as a team. We have a 1 for 100 model, whereby we give away 1 printer for every 100 we deliver to someone trying to make a difference in their community, such as Tuna Panda featured here. And what we've learned from those use cases is it wasn't enough to make the world's largest affordable industrial 3D printer. We had to go a step further and truly democratize the feedstock if we wanted to make sustainable, smarter cities. So we came up with a vision to print from reclaimed plastic. That's right, trash. Seen here are images taken from around our offices in San Juan, Puerto Rico of landfills that are actually closing as we speak. And this is reminiscent of what you'll find in San Antonio, where less than 10% of plastic waste has been repurposed to date. We sought to give that trash a home. Not only did we see opportunity to create value from waste, but also to unlock new markets around the product themselves, new job creation, 3D models, and the collection and sorting ecosystem that follows. This is Gigabot X. There's a version of it behind me and also seen here on this graphic. And just like Gigabot, it has a similar footprint. It allows you to print not only with recycled or virgin pellets, but also flake. This is the first of its kind. The only other flake printers can be anywhere from $200,000 to $1 million in the form factor. This extrusion technology has been in high demand. We are selling it in beta worldwide already, and the customers are requesting bigger and bigger versions of it, from an exabot that's 6 feet tall to now a container bot, where we received requirements from the 149th Fighter Wing in San Antonio. Because you see, as you have lots of waste, you have big problems you need to solve, and you need a big printer to do that. We have filed for trademarks on all of these names as we look at creative ways to take waste, to grind it up, and to print objects of utility. But in order to recruit a customer base, we had to have some case studies to go with that as we work on sustainable goals 9 and 12. So we partnered with the city of Houston, the city of Austin, and the government of Puerto Rico. Here are 3 examples of active pilots we have around our office. By winning reverse pitch, we were able to take waste from making your driver's license, where 2,000 pounds of it goes to the Austin landfill every 10 days, and repurpose it to make objects that are selling for over $150 and more for the Habitat for Humanity restore. We're working with Canon to take toner cartridges and printers to create things in Houston, and in Puerto Rico to take all of those water bottles from the earthquakes and hurricanes to create jobs where 80% of their goods are imported. This has inspired a whole host of customers. Our customers are inspired by our strategic pilots and then come together once a month to share their lessons learned. So with the $10,000 you can provide us today, we'll create 2 more jobs in Texas with underserved communities to create sustainable, greener cities. Thank you.
Great, and you're just at 5 minutes.
Yay, we did it.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and start the 5-minute timer for judges' questions.
Hi, this is Andy. Great job on your presentation. I guess I'll go ahead and kick off with some questions. So I'm curious what some of the barriers to entry are for this market for any competitors who are looking to enter this niche that you've identified. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, full disclosure, initially the market was really unproven. And for those of you in the smart city space, waste is complicated, which is why we biased towards manufacturing waste first. But for manufacturing companies to give us just a small quantity of waste to prototype with, to look at objects of value, whether it's a smart pallet internally, a fixture, a jig, or something with the community, it is a capital outlay for them. That's why we've biased towards strategic pilots that are funded. And so it's a culture change, it's a mind shift change, and then it takes a lot of risk on both ends. In terms of the technology, we can get into the nerdy weeds if you like, but we had to design a screw. There's a lot of science around that, and the heater bands. There's a lot of internal IP around how you make that a reality, and all of that we've had to do with journey fingernails ourselves in Houston, Texas. A lot of the vendors and the components don't exist in order to overcome the technologies. Beyond that, you have to think about all the parameters around slicing and printing, and there's an endless library of waste and needs, which is why we've been working with all of our customers monthly to share who's working on what materials, to curate that database, and to try and scale this through as many case studies as possible.
Awesome, thank you.
This is Judy with Energy Foundry. My question is about the value proposition and the cost to customer. I know that you had some things in your slides that 5 minutes is just a very short amount of time. And so could you articulate, like, if one of your customers that you're testing this with wanted to invest in a different 3D printing machine in order to kind of do what you're doing, like how much cheaper or better, like what are your metrics for being better than like that other competing like 3D printing offering? And then what, I guess, is there any other like cost savings that you're bringing to the table for the customers you're working with?
Yeah, it's been interesting as, it's taken 7 years and a lot of pitches to get those pilot programs and relationships going. What's exciting is, so the system itself, having a pellet printer, the cost parity is significant when you look at like $1 million system. So you can have multiple units, allows you to scale in production. They're also more deployable. So the customer's looking at the ability to create goods on site and the ability to reduce their supply chain by creating on-demand goods. When they start to pair it with waste, and we have lots of examples from around the world now, which is really exciting, they're looking at creating things that would be really unsustainable to import. So it's a lot of times it's non-sexy stuff. It's culverts, it's shoring, the construction industry, the boat builders. So they see a value add to create, whether it's a plastic pallet, which are expensive, that's customized, or a fixture or a jig or this construction item on site. Then they see the opportunity to have equipment that's cheaper to source. And by using their own waste or pellets in and of itself are 1/10 of the cost as other materials, and there's more available on the market. So sometimes they're finding a double or triple value add. For the vendors that are actually looking at partnering in public-private partnerships, we see this a lot, there's usually a tax incentive for them as well to help stimulate new jobs in their community and to divert their waste from the landfill, because oftentimes they're paying to dispose of their scrap anyway. So they have the added value of creating things on demand. They don't have the cost component of disposing of their waste. They have the shareholder benefit of being more sustainable, and then sometimes some kickbacks as well from their local municipality. I can give you some examples if you like.
No, I think that's great. I'll leave it to someone else's questions. Thank you for that.
I'm hoping you add me to LinkedIn too, because I think you might have some good ideas for us.
Hi, Samantha. This is Josh. Great presentation. I love that I'm ex-RPE, Department of Energy, so it's nice to see their federal government is generating more cool innovation, which isn't surprising from NASA. So well done. Question around kind of profitability by customer. To what degree? So on a kind of gross margin or basis, are you profitable by customer, and to what degree does that profitability, again on a kind of gross margin basis, differ depending on volume of material and or kind of source of material?
Sorry to interrupt, we're at the 5-minute mark.
No response.
Do we want to say something?
We've been profitable since our first year. 60% minimum margin, and yeah, our customers are generating up to $100,000 in repeat sales and consumables.
Great. Thank you, 3D. That was a great presentation. All right. Next up, we've got Shay from Varuna.
First off, thanks for having us at Start at ETS. My name is Shay Fabade, CEO and co-founder at Varuna. And at Varuna, we're providing visibility, insights, and awareness to small and medium-sized water systems. I don't need to tell anyone on this Zoom that we have problems with our water systems across the US. Operational inefficiencies, outdated tools, with technicians having to drive between locations to take samples before they know what's going on within their distribution system. These are old, archaic approaches that consequently lead to a lot of waste because they're flushing water, not knowing what's in it. And for you and I, what it ends up being, where the water doesn't get flushed, and that's the financial waste side, where the water doesn't get flushed, we end up with the contamination risk that we all in Texas experienced just about a month and a half ago here. So how do we address this? We've chosen to take the approach at Varuna of dropping what we call nodes. These are sensors that are self-powered, mobile, and can be placed anywhere within the distribution system, captures data from those nodes and brings them back into what we like to call digital representations of the physical water system, so that they can, one, start to understand the risk factors that exist within their water system. We start to predict shocks for them if we get enough data that starts to point towards issues with their water. And fundamentally, we help them to run their water systems optimally. And these approach to digitization of the water system would normally be millions of dollars for the large water systems, but we've chosen to focus on the small and medium-sized with what is a right-sized, right-priced product that allows them to get reductions in the expenses of waste, 10x visibility of a grid that they did, of a water system they didn't have before, at a fraction of the cost they would normally pay for it. And it's a big market, as we all know, 50,000 water systems across the US. And with the bill, or the announcement of the bill, we're starting to see greater emphasis placed on starting to upgrade the infrastructure of our water systems. And we're excited to be at the forefront of making that happen for the small and medium-sized systems. We're just 2 years old, and we've deployed in a few water systems, and we're in contract with water systems across the country. And the approach we've used, as you probably saw on the previous slide, is we're going to the investor-owned utilities that own hundreds of small systems across the country. So when you see New York, NYC DEP up there, we have a project with them, but it's in small buckets in the greater New York area, in the small to medium-sized water system range. We're going to market through two quick approaches: enterprise sales with direct to the IOUs that I mentioned, and partnerships with trusted entities that the utilities currently work with, consultants who put our product in as a complementary element to their service they're providing their customers. Simple software as a service, the hardware is baked into the cost and right-sized based on the size of the water system to ensure they can have enough nodes within their system to get the data they need to run optimally. And as I've sort of alluded to, we've right-sized and right-priced it so that these small and medium-sized water systems can afford advanced technology that is currently inaccessible to them. One more slide here. And we've put together a team of experts in the space. I've worked in utilities for the bulk of my career, going on to 20 years now. And Jamel, my co-founder, is on the business development and sales side. I focus on the product side because I used to be an operations engineer for a power plant that served about 500,000 residents in London. And we've wrapped ourselves around a diverse, highly skilled team with advisors and investors that believe in the vision we have of becoming the digital water utility operating system of the future, enabling efficient delivery of clean water consistently. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Shay. It was also just at the 5-minute mark. All right, time to turn it over to the judges for questioning. Let me reset the timer here. All right, judges, take it away. Shay, I don't know if you want to stop sharing your screen so the view back.
Awesome. Yeah.
There we go.
Hi, Shay, this is Josh. Can you tell us a little bit more about the team? Yes.
So as I mentioned, I'm on the product side. The split is between my co-founder and I. I focus on product. I've worked in utilities for the bulk of my career. He sold to utilities. We have a few people on the team who have prior expertise in the water industry on the chemistry side, making sure our sensors and the units provide the parameter measurements at the consistency that is required to run water systems. And then we've put together a full stack team. We have 4 developers, front end, back end, and a back end guy who's also a data scientist. Most of them I've worked with before. This is the second startup my co-founder and I are working on. The first one was in power utilities, an energy marketplace. And so we've just essentially brought some of the team back together to focus on what we think is a critical problem of water utility digitization. Yeah.
I'll jump in with another question if there aren't any others. So as far as the technology itself, is it could you just describe like what it is? Is it like a sensor you're getting off the shelf? Did you guys develop a whole new sensor in order to achieve the cost point? Just walk us through that.
No, it's a great question. So we started off with developing our own sensors, and quickly found it was cost prohibitive, knowing that the software would be the value area. And I'm glad you asked this question, because what we now do is just buy sensors off the shelf. But when I say we're digitally representing the physical water systems, it truly is taking all the assets, information they have in their old databases, digitizing that, adding nodes to sensors to the distribution system to pull in real-time data, and essentially building out hydraulic models, control models, and water quality models, which they've never had before for this size of utility. And that's where the IP is for us, the ability to help them to generate models of their system so they can make decisions in real time that impact how the system works. I'll use a quick example. Normally, they would flush if water quality, chlorine residuals is dropping in a part of the city for one of our customers. With our sensors now and the models we've built, they can now tell if it's actually contamination or pressure drops before a customer has to call, and they can take the remediation action that is necessary. Before, they would have just sent a technician out there, opened up the pipes, flushed for hours, wasting water, but also not really addressing what the real issue might have been. It's a capability they now have because of the software we've built on the back end using off-the-shelf hardware.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So oh, sorry, go ahead, Charles.
You go ahead, Andy. You're good.
I was just going to ask, Shay, it's good to see you again, but I was going to ask, I know I'm not as familiar with water utilities as I am with electric utilities, but I know that sometimes with working with electric power utilities, sometimes there's a hesitancy to purchase software as a service through that model. And so I'm just curious what your experience has been like through working with the water utilities.
It's another great question. It's sort of two ways. The IOUs want to buy it as capital expenditure. So we package the software. We essentially tell them the hardware doesn't function without the software doesn't function without the hardware. And they capitalize some part of the expense, but for our own ongoing engagements, we make some part of it a subscription service. For the municipalities, though, they've gone either way. We've actually found it surprising. Some just want software as a service because
I'd say that's the 5-minute mark.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, it's so we've seen it work either way, Andy, but it's a good question. We're modifying based on the structures that work for them. Okay. Thanks so much.
Right. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Thank you, judges, for the questions. Okay. Next up, we've got from Xaptum.
Thanks for the opportunity to pitch today. I think for the past 10 years, everybody's been talking about like smart cities, this interconnected world of everything in the city that kind of makes the city more self-aware, and you could optimize all the resources, make it more efficient, save more money. None of that has really happened at the scale that we have kind of predicted or we would wanted. And there's several reasons for that, which I would go into later on in my presentation. But I think we all agree that the future, 10, 15, 20, 50 years from now, we are going to see an interconnected world where data is going to be harvested in a way that it has not been done ever before. And it's going to make our lives simpler, easier, and it's going to make cities more self-aware, whether it's providing better citizen services, optimizing law enforcement services, or emergency services, any of these things, right? So interestingly, the term for the technology term for this that enables this whole paradigm of smart cities is called edge computing. Gartner came up with it a few years back, and that's where we kind of play within the whole smart city equation. So let me give you an example within a smart city. Let's assume that you have a hospital, right? So a connected hospital during COVID, the utilization of resources were extreme. You had to figure out like what was available, what was not available. Yeah. So everybody is trying to optimize the resources and services that they have, and they're connecting all their assets using drone technology and using like different types of sensors, instrumenting devices, ambulances, bedside monitors, and can kind of get a holistic view of what's going on so that they can make better decisions. And all this is possible because of edge computing, and that's tremendous, and that's great, and that's phenomenal. Uh, However, there's a fundamental problem, and the fundamental problem is that it's very difficult to secure your smart cities from cyber attacks because of the way that they're deployed today. For example, let's take an example of the previous company, Varuna, right? So they are in business to help optimize wastewater. That's great. Instrument everything, help the city save money. But if the city gets a cyber attack, the throat to choke is not the vendor Varuna, it's actually the city. And this was proven by a recent attack in the city of Ocala, Florida, where the water treatment facility was attacked, and their data was leaked, and they tried to sabotage some systems there. So it doesn't really pass through the risk of a cyber attack or the security does not pass through to the vendors who are actually implementing the edge computing or the connected infrastructure. So you are seeing cities and enterprises buying more cyber insurance, which is an indication that they're worried about getting attacked, but they don't see that there's a technology today that can solve that problem. And that is where we kind of come in. Is we are trying to make it cheaper, faster, better to implement security and to secure this connected vision and the connected infrastructure for a smart city. The opportunity that we see over here is that your traditional technology vendors that a city would usually hire, like network players like Cisco's of the world, Junipers, Ericsson's, the security providers like Palo Alto, their legacy products are meant for the cloud, and they don't easily kind of port into this edge computing space for smart cities. And what we have figured out is there's an opportunity over here to build a product that could solve that problem for our customers, and kind of make it cheaper for them to embrace not only digital transformation and edge computing, but also make it secure and cost effective. So let's get into the cost, right? So this is, I think, where it's a significant opportunity for Xaptum. If you had to take that hospital, so that for that one building, if they would go with a legacy technology, it costs them over $85,500 over a 5-year period to secure that. With Xaptum, it's $4,500. If they use a combination of legacy technologies like the Cisco's and the Palo Altos of the world, and kind of try to build something on their own, which they really don't have the core competency for, it would probably bring it down to $27,000. But there's a significant cost reduction.
So we're at the 5-minute mark. All right, and we are ready at 5 minutes starting now.
Hi, Rohit. This is Josh. Can you tell us a little bit about the team?
Yeah, so most of us are engineers, and we've built like networking products. We worked at Motorola, Cisco, AT&T, and we've done this in the past. Security, primarily.
I think there was probably some information on like the value proposition and the actual product itself. That would be great to hear about. If you just want to give us a little bit of an overview.
Yeah, so the value proposition is that we're just simplifying the way that you could deliver security uh, uh, than the traditional way of doing it in the cloud. So by reducing that complexity, we're making it cheaper. A very good analog is, let's say, Akamai, right? So in the past, you could not have streaming video because the content was buffering all the time. So Akamai built a software inside the network that could help stop that buffering problem. So in a similar way, what we have done is we have built a software in the network to solve the security problem so that you could start scaling your edge deployments.
And I guess how does that compare to the cost of cyber insurance or other costs that the city would incur for trying to prevent or solve cyber attacks?
So it's a great question. So the city, whether they have, it would definitely reduce their risk profile because they're able to show that they have some kind of assurance, cyber assurance around deployment. However, it just helps them save more money. And like I'd mentioned before, the risk is always the cities, no matter what vendors they choose to, wire up and instrument the city. So it is going up though. They're spending more money in cyber insurance technology. And our budget comes from them, from that money.
Can you speak to a little bit about how easy it would be for cities to integrate with your technology, especially if they have multiple vendors across their different deployments?
Yeah, so our product is as long as you need connectivity, we just go into the network. So essentially, if you have decided to connect the city, you're going to hire AT&T or Verizon or Comcast to get that connectivity. The minute you do that, our product sits in the network. So you're not really doing a lot. The minute you get that connectivity, we basically come baked in with the network. You can just put us on top of the network seamlessly.
Thank you.
So just a question on the architecture. So are you providing the like an actual appliance that is tied back to the native ISP and then filtering all of that traffic through? Is that in essence how the architecture works?
So even great question. So we are actually a registered ISP, but we do not provide connectivity. What we do is we peer with all the other 180 ISPs in the United States, and then we take all the traffic that belongs to our customer and we isolate the traffic and offload it into the customers wherever cloud or other assets that they wanted to be rerouted. So in many ways, what we are doing is we would do what a hacker would do in the dark web, but we are doing the same thing. We're hijacking the customer's traffic on behalf of the customer from the public internet, and we are giving them the custody of that data so that they're responsible for that security and they know that and the data itself. And by the way, that is how we are able to have no integration with AT&T or Verizon or anybody else. So because we are peering with them by regulation, nobody can stop that traffic from coming to us. So there is no integration. The minute you get AT&T, we are in the network.
It's helpful. Thank you.
That is exactly 5 minutes. Thank you, Rohit.
Thanks.
Thank you all for your questions. Okay, so that was our smart city category. Next, we're going to hear some pitches from smart utilities.